Hi everybody, hi my sweet lifers, it's Alisa Murray here. Listen, I have the wonderful pleasure of being able to be on location in North Carolina and visiting with who I call my pops. And this is Ernesto Galvan, and he served in Korea. He also served in Vietnam, and we've done a special program. One of the videographers that was supposed to come and do some interviews with him about the war was not able to do it, and so I just raised my hand and volunteered to do that for you guys and for his grandchildren. There's 5 boys. We just had Santiago was born today. He's 2 weeks old today. So I'll be back in Houston next week photographing the baby, and I photographed a bunch of you, and I love you guys a lot.
Thank you.
And
I love you as well.
And I want to do the preliminary for what this is called Voices Oral History Project. It's done out of the University of Texas in Austin, and I've got interview questions, but I've also got a little preliminary information that I need to read, so that you guys need to know where we're kind of coming from. So the top 10 things that you should know about the Vietnam War. Number 1, between 1945 and 1954, the Vietnamese were combating French control of the country. In 1954, the French suffered a major defeat in Dien Bien, is that right?
Bien Bien Phu.
Okay, which ultimately ended their regime in Vietnam. The peace conference that followed in Geneva resulted in the country being split at the 17th parallel between the communist-controlled North under the leadership of Ho Chi Minh, okay, and the democratic South led by Bodea. Okay, the number 3, the election to unite the country was supposed to be held in 1956. However, this never occurred. Bodea also lost the support of the U.S. as an effective leader. Ninh Dinh Dien, is that right? Is that claims himself president in 1955. He also has American support because of his Western democratic ideals and his Christian background. He was later assassinated in 1963. Right? So the U.S., number 4, the U.S. then began sending military advisors, MACV, into Vietnam by 1963. The number reached 16,300. After 1965, American involvement in the war escalated, resulting in large numbers of combat troops being sent overseas. By 1968, over 536,000 U.S. participants were in Vietnam. 5, a major turning point in the support of war came in 1968 with the Tet Offensive and the My Lai Massacre, as many Americans began opposing the war cause. Number 6, in response, President Nixon began a Vietnamization program of the war, in which more of the fighting would be in the hands of the South Vietnamese troops, while American troops would be withdrawn. Number 7, on the home front, anti-war demonstrations were taking place in college campuses across the nation. The most notable occurred at Kent State in 1970, which is the year I was born, by the way, where guardsmen fired into a crowd of demonstrators, killing 4 students as they protested Nixon's decision to invade Cambodia. Number 8, during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, several movements were underway as Latinos, African Americans, and women were struggling against de facto segregation and discriminatory treatments, as well as the large numbers of Latinos being sent into Vietnam into combat. Number 9, U.S. presidents during war: Eisenhower, 1953 to 61, Kennedy, 1961 to 63, Johnson, 1963 to 1969, and Nixon, 1969 to 1974. 10, statistics. 88.4% of the men who served in Vietnam were Caucasian, 10.6%, 27,000 were black, 1% belonged to other races. 86.3% of the men who died in Vietnam were Caucasian, including Hispanics, 12.5%, 7,241 were black, 1.2 belonged to other races. 170,000 Hispanics served in Vietnam, 3,070, 5.2% of whom died there. 76% of the men sent to Vietnam were from lower middle working class backgrounds. 9,087,100 military personnel served on active duty during the Vietnam era. On August the 5th, 1964 through May 7th, 1975. 58,202 died, 7,484 women, 6,250 or 8.3% were nurses that served in Vietnam. So Pops, talk to me about Vietnam.
Well, it all started when I came. I had been assigned to Alaska from the 82nd Airborne Division, which I was stationed in Fort Bragg after the Korean War.
Okay.
And I was assigned to Alaska during the Cold War. And we served down there with the 2nd Infantry Division to guard the night missiles that we had in place pointing over to Russia.
Oh.
And you had to have clearance, security clearance, secret clearance to get into those bases. So we was guarding them, and we guarded also some of the Air Force bases in Fairbanks, Alaska. We had that, and the Allison Air Force Base,
Okay.
where we had to guard the secret plane.
Oh.
And I don't think I'm supposed to talk about that. I don't know yet. Because, some of the work that I did at that time was kind of secret, you know. But anyway, I ended up being drafted
Okay.
into Special Forces
Okay.
from my regular unit when I returned from Alaska. And they told me that if I didn't want to be in Special Forces, not only me, there was 38 guys that got picked because we had certain prerequisites that they needed. These orders came from the Pentagon,
Right.
and they had this certain things that we were qualified on, that we were trained and went to school for in experience, combat experience. And they were looking for sergeants that had experience in leadership and so forth, and also languages,
Yeah.
that spoke other languages. So I was sort of drafted into that because I also had the languages, the capability of speaking Spanish, of course, and I spoke French, Italian, Portuguese, and I'm still working on English, the basic knowledge of the
At that time.
English at that time.
I was going to say, you speak perfect English now.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I had to bring that up. But anyway, and I went. I got assigned back to the States with the 101st Airborne Division in Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and that's when they drafted me.
Okay.
But the orders came from my high headquarters up in the Pentagon, and they took us down. We went to Fort Bragg. They were forming Special Forces. They already had them formed. They were formed late to go to Korea.
Right.
But this was a new war starting, you know, so they were really forming the Special Forces. And this unit that they formed at Fort Bragg was the 77th Special Forces Group. And their history and background comes from the troops that were under that command in Europe, in Germany. And they were, at that time, they were the first Special Forces Group. And later on, they they were under the OSS. OSS was a group of people that were infiltrated into Europe and had to organize guerrilla groups within behind enemy lines in Germany and other places. And it stands for Office of Strategic Services. I think that's what it was, but anyway, which now they call the CIA.
Yep.
So, they gave us an orientation when we got there, and they said, okay, I mean, you guys come from, you had to be a paratrooper to begin with. You had certain qualifications that they wanted, and one was being able to be a paratrooper, being able to speak languages, being able to lead, and combat experience. And you had to be a sergeant or higher.
Right.
So we were there, but then they told us in orientation, now, you guys all come from different airborne units, 82nd, 101st, and whatever. And he says, if you don't like it, what you're gonna hear here, he says, you're welcome to go back to your unit. This is all volunteer.
Oh.
And the other thing that we're gonna tell you is you gotta be, in order to be in this unit, you gotta have a good record, and you gotta have a high IQ. And to meet our IQ, a high IQ, you have to meet that, and other criteria, they said, and you have to have a clean record, no criminal record, and they said that, what else? Oh, yeah, that you had to pass their clearance. In other words, they put you in front of a, they questioned you all over, and each one of us had to go through a lie detector test.
Wow.
To see that we, and then they checked your background. The National Security Agency cleared us for secret. If they found anything wrong,
You weren't going.
You were going back to your unit.
Yeah.
You didn't get kicked out of the service, but you go back to the unit. And the other thing that they wanted to was people that were career soldiers at that time. I don't know if they changed now or not, but at that time it was career soldiers, and I was one of them. So that's what they were looking for.
Right.
And as we stayed there, we decided. Well, no, I decided to stay, and the ones that didn't want to go, they sent them back. The ones that want to stay, we stayed. And then
How many left?
Well, for my group of 38, there was about 18.
Once they figured out what was going on,
Right,
they didn't want to do
They
it.
didn't like it.
Wow.
Well, the group I had. And after that, they gave us some more tests that they put us through, about reading the compass and the map and all that we had. And then we went like a merry-go-round they had out there on the field, on a big field. They had all these sergeants, and they had these different tests that they put you through a test, like, a little test and see how much you knew about everything. They had weapons, they had all kinds of weapons, and they had explosives, they had all kinds of good stuff there,
Good stuff. Good stuff.
And then they after we got through that, and we had to have a little course on they wanted to find out how much we knew about map reading and how to follow the compass and all that, And then that night we had to run a course during the night and see how well we navigated in the area without no light.
Right.
And
They were preparing you for the jungle.
right, for everything,
Yeah.
to know, So then, after that, we were told that, you're in special forces now, and we were assigned to different units. At that time, Special Forces had a different assignment different organization than they have today. We were called detachments. The teams were called detachments. You know, they didn't have no letters or nothing. They were just detachments. Detachment 1, Detachment 14, or
Gotcha.
whatever.
Yeah.
And that's the way we had. And when we wore our uniforms, we didn't wear no rank. See, we just wore the little U.S. and the little Department of Defense
Right.
sticker, you know. And we started training. They trained us because they had already some training. Special Forces they had formed, you know, and they had. And most of these guys that were in Special Forces at that time, again, some of them were from World War II.
Oh, they were from World War II too.
Yeah, and they were Rangers, you know, and
Okay.
they were the Morados and all that worked behind the ambulance and stuff, you know, and the OSS, you know, and so we went. They gave us our training. It was rigorous training. We had to go through a lot. We had to go to Ranger School too, and we had to go to underwater demolitions down in Little Creek, Virginia.
I remember you telling me that.
One time, you know.
You were trained in everything.
Right.
Everything.
Everything.
Under the water.
Communications, right.
Yeah. Falling out of the
Fighting,
sky.
Mountain
Everything.
training. I already had the mountain training, so I didn't have to do much of that. I know how to rappel and all that stuff, but anyway, that's the training we had, and then we had to go through some of the sniper training too, you know, that kind of special training.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can say. And then, of course, I was cleared for secret clearance, so they gave me secret clearance. Some of the guys had to get double secret clearance. And because we were under some of the classes that we received and some of the training we received was not just a regular, ordinary training. It was specialized, and it was some of it still today probably secret, top secret. I don't know. But some of those things in Special Forces that I did, served in Vietnam, I can't talk about.
Right.
That I know. And they haven't been published. There have been several books about the Green Berets being published now. They're all out. But after my training, we already had some teams that were in Thailand.
Mm.
Now that's been cleared, you know. And then we had some that had been sent to South Vietnam because they were having problems with the Viet Cong and the South Vietnamese Army.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Viet Cong, the North Vietnamese hadn't come in yet, and it was just the Viet Cong communists, and they were fighting them. And I was saying up to, this is clear, I know, what they call White Star operation. My team went to Thailand, and from Thailand we went over to Vietnam. And we were there. That's how it started, you know, being in Vietnam. I mean, you know, I was there in Vietnam. And I better not say what year because they Well, anyway, so we was there to, you know, to recon to find out who was involved in this. Who was
Well, and so
actually
Pops,
involved.
one question I want to ask you is that when you said, when we were talking about the Korean War, you literally got there, the sky was lit up.
Right.
You're a young boy, basically. You're not even really a fully grown man. I mean, you're a young adult. And it was like, boom, you're in the middle of it. And it sounds like with Vietnam, you were prepared, you had clearances, you had special projects, and when you got there, you didn't walk into war.
No.
It was a completely different
It
beginning.
Right. Well, as a professional soldier, I was already with experience.
Right.
So it was totally different.
Right.
You know. And we went under, and we did contact some of the civilian populace. Now there we go. See, because Special Forces also works with the indigenous people
Right.
of the country.
Right.
And that was totally different than the Special Forces groups work. You know, they also helped the citizens in the country sometimes, you know. They build schools, they build other things, the airstrips and stuff, you know. They help them get water, you know, and all that, make wells and all. You know, Special Forces has a lot of things to help, you know. But that's part of the other mission, you know. We had several missions. And when I was there, we was there to scout and find out where this was coming from. We didn't know, well, at that time, we didn't know much about where it was. Maybe they did at the Pentagon.
Right.
Capital. I'm not going to say, because I don't know whether it's been cleared or not.
Yeah.
But anyway, obviously now I'm there. And well, but how it all started is our base camp. I was assigned to a team
Okay.
in Special Forces. I was a replacement brother.
Mm-hmm.
One of the team guys got killed, and I was there to replace it because they were already up there, you know, trying to find out if anything else was involved in this, you know, which they figured out. They thought it was the Russians, and then they thought it was the Chinese, but the Chinese were really involved. They have Ho Chi Minh. After Ho Chi Minh came to the United States and tried to get help to overthrow the existing government, corrupt government they had in Saigon, what the United States did. So then he went to the communists, and he got support from the Chinese. You know, so there we are, and we got involved because, well, I guess that our presidents or our Washington tried to help the men down there, you know, because we didn't want no communists to rule the South Vietnam. But I don't know if they ever told this or not, but one of the reasons the North Vietnamese were to make it all one country like they have now, because South Vietnam had all the agriculture.
Resources.
They had the rice, they had all the things that they needed, that they didn't have much of. They had more industry up north.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think it was. I don't know if I'm right or not, but that's what I thought after I'm here. But anyway, our mission was, we were in the base camp. I was assigned to the Delta in South Vietnam. And we was a team, 18, they call it 18. I think it was in 1814. I don't remember the village name. I had a stroke here not too long ago, and my rear lobe, as well as some of it, the other one got affected by my stroke, so I forgot a lot of stuff.
Okay.
But anyway, what I remember was we was with this team. I got into this team when I went down there, and they accepted me really nice for a Latino. And when I went down there, I met another Latino guy from California. And he was a good guy. And there was two of us in the team. And we knew a little bit of Vietnamese, but I knew French, so I could communicate with some of the Vietnamese because they all spoke, most of them spoke besides their language, knew
Right.
French because they've been under the French occupation. So I could communicate pretty good with him, you know, and with the populace outside of the camp, because there was a village about 5 clicks away that was around, you know. When we'd go on patrol, we'd go by there and check it, because the North Vietnamese, as well as the Vietcong, they controlled some of these
Little villages.
because that's where they got some of their support for food. You know, they got their rice and stuff, you know.
Right.
And they also got these villages, you know, the chiefs of the village or the people. They started giving them money to tell where we were or where we were going sometimes. They were smart. North Vietnamese were very smart. They had caves, they had tunnels and stuff underneath the ground that we couldn't see. Even they couldn't do very much in the Delta, because and during the monsoon season they would
just full of water.
And that was more done up in the mountains up there, where the mountain yard were at. The bases that we had indigenous people.
Mm-hmm.
And the base that I had some South Vietnamese Army officers, and they had probably 1 or 2 or 3 detachments they called Special Forces too. They were trained by Special Forces.
Mm-hmm.
But then we had the regular troops. Now regular troops we paid them. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
They were Cambodians. See, we were next to the Cambodian border.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's cleared or not, but I better not talk much about it. But that's the kind of people we had.
Yeah.
Indigenous people.
Yeah.
You know, and we didn't have to train them much. They already knew.
They already knew.
Mercenaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, what for us, mud and food,
right,
and things, you know. And that's the way we operated. And a lot of my operations were classified. And of course, we got hit several times in the bases we were at. But our mission was to also get intelligence reports for the 9th Infantry Division that was stationed in the Delta.
Mm-hmm.
We went and found where the enemy was and where he was located, and what their strength and all that information, you know, they needed. And we'd brief the generals of the 9th and the G2, you know, from them, and then they would send our boys, 9th Infantry Division, some of our boys would go and search and destroy missions. And they would come to our base and use it sometimes as a staging area. And they would bring their helicopters and stuff, and they would bring their 105 Housers and big guns and bring them by helicopter and put them in the base camp so that they have fire support. And they also communicated with the Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
And for the jets to come in and bomb when they had to, you know. And but the thing about this is, once we did all this, then me and my little people, a few of my people, you know, six members, and myself, we'd go in helicopters with them, and we'd be in the lead helicopter to show them where these villages were, where they were, you know, more or less for search and destroy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we'd get in, and we'd have gunships around, and they would be clearing up the area, you know, and all that with gunships. And then we'd land, and they'd land. And sometimes, if we wouldn't meet no resistance, and there sometimes that all hell would break loose.
Yeah.
And that's when they'd hit helicopters and stuff. And that's how Roy Benavides from my unit, from the 5th Special Forces Group, you know, got decorated for me. He saved a whole bunch of guys, you know, when they got hit and landing. Well, I didn't suffer nothing up there, thank God. He was with me. But some of my other people did, you know, when we land, you know, they get hit, you know. And
Would you come in on a helicopter and land into the village?
no, not in the village, in the field.
Okay.
And we'd have to walk to the villages. We didn't go right straight into the village. They'd open up. We'd land up in this field, you know, in these rice paddies, and away from the village, you know, just a few miles, a couple of miles away, you know, and then we'd have to go in, and sometimes you'd get ambushed, and sometimes you didn't, you know. And but sometimes when we'd land, sometimes somehow they knew exactly where we were going to be, because they had to land on an open field, you know. And they would open up on us, you know, and they'd be along the tree lines, and they would open up as we come in. And then that's when we had contact, before we even got to the village. You know. But then, after we'd have something like that, and we'd keep on going, they would keep on going and into the village and do the search and destroy. And what in some villages, what we would do, we would get all the
houses.
If it was a small village, we'd get all the personnel out. After we went and checked in, and we'd find weapons and stuff, you know, that Viet Cong had stashed there, you know, and we would pick up the chief, village chief. They had a village chief for every village. We'd pick them up and take the children and women. We didn't do no bad to them. We'd pick them up, and then we had these caribou helicopters, the big helicopters, come and pick them up and take them away, and they would put them next to where our base camp was.
To protect them.
Yes, keep them from supporting the enemy, but at the same time we're protecting them.
Mm-hmm.
And we would feed them and all that, you know, and that's how it would be, you know, in some of the cases, you know. And we constantly stayed close to the Mekong River, you know, because they were using a jump off from Vietnam to Cambodia and back and forth, and sometimes we went into Cambodia when we weren't supposed to be, but we did, you know.
Yeah.
But that's about it, you know. It was totally different than fighting like
It
they
sounds
did
like
in World
completely
War II
different.
and Korea. We had lines that we didn't have no lines. The enemy was almost the enemy. And where we had our base camp, the enemy could come in from any direction and attack us. And that's why we had some base camps that got overrun. You know, we got hit several times. But we had a big surprise for them. I ain't gonna say what it was, but anyway.
Yeah.
Once they found out we had that surprise, they didn't come too often. And on that big tower we had a big surprise.
So how many years were you there? You were there the whole time.
In Vietnam,
Yeah.
I think in Vietnam I served. No, I didn't stay, you know, from the Vietnam War. I mean, I was there for the Tet Offensive in 1968. I think I spent, I can't recall, maybe 12 months, 13 months, something like that. I did, you know. And I returned back to the States.
Mm-hmm.
But I stayed there. No, I didn't stay there until they made these truces or whatever, you know, when they started withdrawing. I came way before then.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, that was it. It was a totally different war than what I had.
It sounds very different. And what's interesting, Pops, is that as a child, I'm not a war buff. Like, I'm not that, you know, I'm not. Y'all know that. But it sounds like Korea was way worse.
It was very bad. I mean,
Way worse.
well, for for us, but now for the regular troops in Vietnam, I'm talking about our guys, the infantry guys in the divisions, it was bad.
Yeah.
But for special forces, we had a different mission,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, but when you were in Korea, you were having icicles on your helmet,
Right.
fighting every day in the
Right.
trenches, having
Right.
that 50% alert level,
Right.
constant battle, constant. It sounds like in Vietnam, because you were in special forces,
Right,
your experience was a completely different experience.
right.
Like,
Yes, it was. Yeah, we lost some people, but not as much as the regular Army troops we had there. I have a bad memory about the 9th Infantry Division. They used, one time they used our area for staging area, like I said, to get prepared to go into search and destroy. That's when I went with them. They got hit hard when we landed. Again, we lost not special forces or components, you know, that we had, because there was only a small group of us. But they had a lot of our infantry boys, and they got hit hard, and they had to be medevac a lot of them down to Kento medical field out there, field hospital. That broke my heart. We only lost maybe, well, I was with the team, we only lost 2 guys, that's all. So, you know, that's a big difference, out of 12.
right,
But that's all we had in camp of Americans.
right.
And the rest were indigenous people, South Vietnamese and Cambodians.
Mm-hmm.
What we really were doing, our part was more guerrilla strategy, guerrilla warfare.
Yeah,
Ours was
completely different.
different, yeah. Hit and run,
Mhm.
find intelligence, you know.
What about this Agent Orange and the cancer that you have?
Okay,
Where did that come from?
all right. That came from, well, when I was in the camp, we had this elephant grass.
Okay.
It's high grass that grows, I mean, tall, about 6 foot high. And when we had the base camp, where we built the base camp that we had, where they built the base camp, it grew out there in front.
Wild.
So,
It was wild grass.
well, yeah, it's big grass. You
Yeah.
know. They call it elephant because the elephants like it.
Oh,
But it grows real tall.
okay.
And well, it cuts you when you walk through it.
Oh.
Sometimes it's sharp. You'll find some grass similar to that here in homes, you know, they put up in the big bunches. It grows like that, not quite as tall. Well, they brought this. At that time, I think they were beginning to spray out there in the depth and other places. I don't know. You know, to kill the vegetation, and up in the mountains was over the canopies of the jungles, so they could see, you know, from the air.
Yeah.
And well, how ours came about was on our base camp we had to clear what we called fields of fire, where we covered the area where we were supposed to, in case we got attacked. We had to cut it, and that was too much to cut grass out there. We couldn't cut it like that. So what they did, they brought us 50-gallon drums of orange, Agent Orange, and we sprayed it around. Then we let it see it, and the grass died. Then we put aviation fluid
And
right
burned it.
there and burned it, and it cleared up about that high. That don't mean it wasn't going to rub it.
Right.
But
But you kind of cleared your area.
Cleared the area enough for us to see if they were coming and where they were coming. There was only 2 ways they could come in on our field, on our base camp. And so they tried several times, but we gave them a surprise, like I'm telling you, I'm not supposed to say that. Because he was unauthorized.
Well,
I'll tell you later.
the thing is that Agent Orange causes bad stuff, which we all know. I'm not sharing anything new information, but that was the reason, because I've always wondered, how did you, because I hear about it, and I'm like, okay, how did that happen? Why were you even exposed to that? Now I know why you were exposed to that. You had to clear the base camp, and that's the way you did it. You spray that first.
Right. But in other places, some other guys got it, like our GIs, infantrymen, that were sprayed by the airplanes.
Oh.
They flew over and dropped that stuff.
On top of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, on top of the areas, and they came in contact. And our base was, at the same time, we had a canal going right over, just right along our base game. And we even drank that water. So we sort of got it, exposed to it.
Right.
And at first it started breaking us out in skin and stuff like acne, and itching, And our doctors who were assigned to special forces from Kanto came over and checked us out, and they had the whole thing. And I didn't know what we didn't know. We thought it was jungle rot because of the wetness, and we stayed there in the mud and stuff, even though we cleaned up and all that. And they gave us some kind of ointment to put on, and we put it on, and it started taking care of it. We thought, well, it's some jungle rot, jungle fungus, Later on, we found out, way after they come and investigated, that he was Agent Orange.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got mine, And I don't know how many of my team members got it, but they got it. And he's still working on some of the guys.
Mm-hmm.
This Agent Orange. That was ours, not the enemy. So we're still paying for it.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about Vietnam. I don't have much.
You did a great job.
But I was in Laos too. Operation White Star. Yeah. I came out in a magazine on that too.
Yeah, that's the other thing. So I featured Pops in my column. You can go to my Alisa Murray's LivingTheSweetLife.com, and you can read the story that I wrote on Pops. He was on the cover of Time magazine.
Right. Well, I was also in the cover of the other magazine. Not in the cover, but in the pages.
Right.
When we was in Laos on White Star operation, it shows me teaching some of the Laotians some of our tactics of how to fight the enemy. We was in Laos.
Yeah.
But it came out.
It
I
did.
forgot that other magazine when news was. I don't know, but it was.
Yeah. Very famous. Pops is famous. Listen, I love you.
Yeah.
I hope I haven't worn you out by talking all about
thank
all
you
of
very
this.
much for the interview, and I felt like I cleared some of the stuff that I've been carrying on.
That's important, for all of us to understand what went on and how it went on, and a lot of the misconceptions about it need to be brought to the public's attention, because experience is everything, and everybody has a different experience of it. But I want to thank you for your service, and I understand that you know that already, but I want to let you guys know that we really do need to spend a lot of time with, paying attention to, listening to our veterans, and giving them jobs, giving them opportunities, and honoring them for taking their time to pledge their allegiance to all of our flags and serve our country so that we can have a free America. And it's very important. And so I hope that you guys have found some value in this. I've had a wonderful time spending the afternoon with Pops talking about this.
Oh yes, I forgot to tell you.
What?
I was also awarded the Bronze Star
Oh, good.
in Vietnam.
Okay. Now, was there anything else?
No, that's about what I was going to tell you. And of course, all the other awards that they give you, when you're in Vietnam, all the other And my combat infantry badge, of course, you know, that they give you, you know. And my combat pay that I received.
Combat pay. Don't forget that.
And paratrooper pay.
That's good stuff. Well, listen, I hope you guys have found some value in this interview. We really are honored to have been able to do it. And it's just been really special. So we'll see you soon on the channel. Take care.